Hello and welcome to Mindful Living, where we explore the art of living with the intention, balance, and inner peace. I am Avik, your host, guiding you through conversations on health, meditation, mental well being, mindfulness, and the mind body connection. Each episode features expert insights to help you grow, heal, and thrive. So, take a deep breath, relax, and join us on this journey to a more mindful and fulfilling life. So, let's get started.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast, where we explore the depth and variety of human experiences, often through the lens of mindfulness, connection, and self discovery. Today, we are diving into a topic that pushes societal boundaries and opens up new avenues of understanding human nature, kink, and the power of exploring desires without shame. Joining us is Todd Carey, the director of the new documentary Touch Kink. Max, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, listeners, Max has spent over 30 years traveling and living in 137 countries. And he's now brought his bold, unapologetic perspective to filmmaking, exploring the world of kink and BDSM in a way that centers around consent, communication, and aftercare. And in today's episode of the Mindful Living podcast, we learn about the making of touch kink, the human nature behind exploring kinks, and how this film is sparking a conversation about intimacy, trust, and freedom. So, listeners, let's get ready and dive in. So, Todd, welcome to the show once again. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm interested in having a chat with you today and hopefully exploring some of these interesting subjects.
Superb, superb. So, Todd, before we proceed to the discussion, our listeners would love to know a bit about your personal journey, how you got into what you're doing right now.
I've always been a somewhat do what I want to do kind of person from the time I was a kid. I went to go live in Europe and got sort of addicted to traveling. So I lived in over 137 countries and I would just kind of figure it out, figure out some way to make a living, figure out some way to get to live in that culture and learn about that. And it just seemed to be kind of this natural curiosity first into exploring countries, and then I would work with travel companies to produce promotional material for them about those countries, or I'd work with movie companies to help them find locations in these countries. And then last few years I got more interested in subcultures, subcultures within the culture, because it seems to me that there's just all these wonderful cultures and all deserve respect, and they all have good sides and maybe not so good sides, and that's just kind of the nature of it. And I started thinking of kink. The world of kink is this sort of other country I wanted to visit. So in this documentary, I started exploring it with the same kind of eyes that I explore other countries. What are the rules? What are the good side of this country? What's the stuff that may not be so great, and what can this culture teach us? So that's basically my whole life has been exploring, being curious, and just sort of figuring out how to do what I wanted to do.
That's really awesome, Todd. It's a one of a lifetime opportunity, not for everyone. So thank you so much for sharing.
It's definitely not for everybody. I think it's one of those things you have to be comfortable sort of sometimes living, out of a backpack, and sometimes living in a nice place, sometimes in a hostel, sometimes in a 4-star, whatever. It's one of those, you have to be a very adaptable person to be able to do it. It's definitely not for everybody.
Definitely. So, as a first-time director, what inspired you to take on the subject of kink and BDSM in Touch Kink, and what message were you hoping to convey through the film?
like traveling to countries, I love finding things that surprise me.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a dominatrix a number of years ago in Budapest, I think it was. And I have to be honest, I was very surprised by our interaction. She really wasn't what I expected.
Okay.
And that made me very curious because whenever I try to be very open-minded, but when I find myself in some sort of prejudice where I'm like, okay, why do I think these dominatrixes are going to be like this? It just
Mm-hmm.
made me very curious. So I was lucky enough to get to explore that. And this particular world is all over the place. I mean, I filmed in Costa Rica, I filmed in the United States, in England, and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get an opportunity to film in India, but I know that there is actually even a scene in India.
Uh-huh.
So, which is curious. And then the more I got into the world, the more I thought this is really interesting, that this is sort of a way forward for many people,
Mm-hmm.
a way forward for all relationships, whether they be kinky or not, because because some of the things are a bit edgy. People really are careful. There's a lot of very open, very clear, very open conversations. You can't hold back. You need to sort of be somewhat shameless in talking about what you're interested in. Not necessarily, people may not necessarily like what you're into, but usually in the kink community, they'll accept and have the conversation. It won't be so shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So that openness without shame, I think, is something that all relationships can learn from, and all people can learn from, is to listen carefully to the other person without judgment, and just find if there's any commonalities or not, but not judge them for what they believe or what interests them. And then if they do find some commonality, that process of making sure you have clear consent. I think a lot of people right now have a real problem, like how are men supposed to deal with women and vice versa, or how
Yeah.
do people form relationships? What are the rules? The rules seem to have, certainly in most of the world, are changing very fast. The classical models are gone. So what are the rules moving forward? And I think kink offers a wonderful answer to that question. And that is, well, there can be anything that two people agree to.
Mm-hmm.
You with your partner get to make a clear decision as to how you want to live. And it may seem unusual to others, but who cares? As long as it's something that two of you have talked about and you consent to and agree upon, so it's the way forward. You can't, there's no one set of rules for everybody anymore. I think it's important to have clear, open conversations and consent to what the rules are going to be with the person. And then you can try that. The play, in kink terms, they talk about that as a play or a scene where you try it out. Maybe you're going to do a 50s household where somebody's going to be cook dinner, and the other person's going to arrive and expect their slippers put on and the newspaper, and maybe it's gender reversal. Maybe it's the man that cooks and cleans and the woman comes home with smokes her cigar and whatever. I mean, you can do whatever you decide to do. You play with that, you see how it works. And then the most important thing, and the thing that makes kink okay and makes this the thing that I think is so important to understand, is that you don't stop there. You talk about it afterwards. You do what's called aftercare. Like, how was that for you? Was that comfortable? Did you want more of this, less of this? And just have open and honest conversations about how that went. And if you choose to, you start back at the beginning again and have some more conversations and get consent to do it the next way. That circle of being open and honest, talking, getting consent, trying it, and then checking in with that person.
Mm-hmm.
That to me seems to be something, whether it be business, whether it be spirituality, whether it be kink, whether it be classic relationships, that circle is all the difference. And I think the kink world, because of its edgier nature, has always practiced that more religiously than most. And I think that's perhaps one of the biggest gifts that kink can give the world. And that fascinated me, and that's what my film is about.
That's
How's
really
that for an answer?
that's really profound. Wow. Okay, talking about the other side of the coin, Todd.
Sure.
Many people, especially if since I'm from India, I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree with this. They are still uncomfortable or misinformed. There's a lot of societal stigma when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
discussing kink
Mm-hmm.
and BSM or anything remotely, towards consent or sex or anything. What do
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
hope audiences take away from Touch Kink in terms of breaking down shame or stigma surrounding the consensual kink practices?
Well, lesson one for me is always most of the concerns that say parents have for their children is all simple. They're worried that they don't want you to get into trouble. They don't want you to have a bad experience or have bad things happen. So lesson one, I think, is for them to sort of get a look behind and realize that it's a actually, I firmly believe you're safer going to a kink event than you are going to a local sports bar, because kink practitioners will typically follow these rules quite strictly, more than others. So, once parents or once people start realizing actually you're safer exploring these things, your interests and dealing with shame and looking for things that might interest you, you're safer in a kink environment than you are in a normal environment because of the sheer nature of it. I think, people will be more accepting. And, shame is there for a reason. Shame is there to protect us. But there's a lot of things we shouldn't be shameful about. I mean, if it's something that makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody, I don't think there should be any shame. If you are hurting people without their consent, then I think you should have shame. It's about the circle. It's about the thing. You can smack somebody across the face if they want it, and that's perfectly fine. If you do it and they don't want it, that's shameful. That's bad. That's, it's understanding it's not the activity, it's the process. It's the circle that you build of conversation, consent, play, and aftercare. So to me, it's dealing with shame specifically is a slow process because different cultures have different expectations. But ultimately, I think the people that worry the most about us worry about things they don't understand. So if they understand it better and we can talk more openly about it, they might feel more comfortable. I would honestly feel more comfortable if my daughter goes to a kink party than to a regular party at the college, because I know the college people drink and do crazy things. At a kink party, there's literally what's called the dungeon master, whose job it is to make sure nothing that you don't want to have happen happens. And they monitor everybody to make sure. So you're safer, again, at a kink party than you are at your regular party that, people are making assumptions of whatever the culture is, that those are always bad when people just work with that. So educating yourself, understanding it, exploring it, being respectful of it, I think it's a wonderful way to navigate forward in relationships.
Lovely, lovely. And one of the key elements you highlight in the film is the importance of negotiation, informed consent, and as you mentioned, aftercare and kink practices. So, listeners, can you explain how these practices foster deeper communication and intimacy between partners?
Well, negotiation, and for me to negotiate with you, there's no point in me not telling you the truth. So, I'm X, I'm Y, I'm interested in this and that, and I have to be open and honest with you. Otherwise, there's no point. So it fosters that openness and honesty right from the beginning. Maybe, somebody is a bit more feminine, a bit more masculine. They like shoes. I honestly think everybody's a fetishist, whether they realize it or not. Some people say, oh, you have such beautiful eyes. Well, you've got a fetish for eyes, I guess. You have such a beautiful, beautiful hair. Oh, I guess you got a fetish for hair. I mean, everybody, there's something. So it's fine to say, I really, I find myself attracted to the way you talk, or your eyes, or your hair, or that, or your feet, whatever. It's all just being open and honest and establishing so both people feel comfortable sharing those kinds of things, because that leads to intimacy, that leads to connection. Just that openness. There's a very common expression in the kink world that your kink may not be my kink, but that's okay. There's no shaming. No one's going to say, oh, you like, in the kink community, at least no one's going to say, oh, you're weird. You like feet, or you want to be tied up. You're weird. Nobody says stuff like that. It's like, well, I like rope, or I don't, So there's no question that just being more open and honest about what you like will help you understand yourself better and create better intimacy. And you don't have to understand everything. Just start with what it is about the other person that attracts you and what interests you, and don't worry so much about shame, or don't have that shame. People, everybody, I think everybody's got a kink. It's just a question of whether they call it or not. That. I get it's hard sometimes, especially, in cultures that are more strict about behavior,
Yeah.
but or what they think. But ultimately, the reasons they're strict about it is just trying to protect. So understand and accept and learn. And then going into it, you do it cautiously, and you only do whatever's agreed to. If somebody tries to do something more than what was negotiated or agreed to, you stop. You do a safe word. You end it, and that person, needs to learn. That's not the trick. If you agree to do X and you try to do Y as well, that's not cool, and it just ends right there. So it might seem almost a little boring, a little too scientific in the beginning to be so clear about every little action, but I think it's a great place to start. And of course, as you develop the relationship and develop more intimacy, you'll have more of a shorthand moving forward. But it really answers the question that a lot of guys are wondering, and a lot of women are wondering is like, how do I navigate the future? How do I navigate relationship in the future? What's cool? What's not cool? What can I do? What can I not do? And the answer is you can do anything you want. You just have to be sure the other person wants that as well.
Hmm. And throughout your travels and experiences in different cultures, Todd, have you noticed any or how different societies view or practice kink and BDSM? How do these cultural variations influence people's perceptions of sexual freedom and consent?
Absolutely. It's a bit cliche, but I'm going to use the analogy anyway. For the most part, I find German people very direct, very like, I like this, I like that. They're very kind of direct about everything. And so in that culture, they are more kinky, but they are also more sort of direct about what they like and what they don't like. And it seems those conversations are easier for people to have. I believe that even that I remember reading, I think in their sexual education in school now, they even discuss,
Mhm.
some of these subjects. Where cultures like India, where a lot of people are a lot more conservative,
Mhm.
it's a lot harder for
Yes,
people to come up, have these talks because they're like, well, oh my God, I'm a woman. I'm not even allowed to talk about my own
exactly.
pleasure, perhaps. My goodness, how could you even think about such things? Oh my God, well, so you have to make sure that you kind of get past that. Maybe you want to weed those people out a little faster, that people that you can have honest conversations with, and you feel like you're going to be judged right from the beginning. You need to weed those people out real quick. And I think you can find more people that would be willing to have honest, sincere conversations in the
Mhm.
kink community easier than you could, again, at your local pub or whatever. So yeah, cultures vary. Some cultures that tend to be a little bit more naturally explicit tend to
Mhm.
fare better and tend to be more into it because it's just part of the culture. Cultures that are a little shyer, that are it's something that's like they feel like there's a lot of culture, like India, or the Middle East, where there's so many kind of a man's supposed to be like this and a woman's supposed to be like that, and those rules are still holding on a little longer. It's a
Right.
little tougher. In those places, I think it's important to go to places that there's events called munches, and I know they happen in India. I think I've been to one in Bangalore.
Mhm.
I know there's one in Mumbai. I've been to one. They're more hidden communities, but they do exist in India as well. So you just have to ingratiate yourself and don't be a good person. Don't be a weirdo. Don't and just get to know people. But you know that these people you'll be able to be a bit more open with these people and slowly progress. Just
Mhm.
because someone might be interested in, say, spanking, doesn't mean that that you should make sure if you're in a conversation and you tell someone that you're into spanking, that they don't automatically assume that means they get to spank you.
Mhm.
That's one of those things that everyone's, oh, you like, okay, I'll do that. And you just, no, I'm just telling you what I like, we're getting to know each other. I'm not telling you you can do this. And if you get people that are oversimplifying this, that the moment you tell them what you're interested in, they think that automatically means that you'll do that with them without any saying anything. Avoid those people as well. You have to have honest, open people before you can play with any of this stuff. And if people learn, I think the biggest danger right now in the kink world sometimes is people who learn a little bit,
Mhm.
then they go do stuff without necessarily understanding the full ramifications, and they oversimplify it. They're like, oh, someone likes to be spanked. Okay, I'm going to spank you. That's it's not that. You have to have conversations. You have to be both sides have to be open. Something clear has to be agreed on. And just because someone's into something doesn't mean they're into doing it with everyone. you know. So it's just, it's a sort of an intellectual development. It's just being around the right people and trusting your judgment. Why the munches are always the best place to start, because it's usually done in a public environment. Nobody's dressed in any way unusual. They're just a bunch of people getting together, maybe having a drink or some tea and talking about different things. And somebody might talk about rope and somebody talks about this, and you just get conversations going and you slowly develop relationships and connections with people, and you go from there.
Interesting. That's really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
Todd.
Mm-hmm.
In Touch Kink, you touch on the idea that kink can be a path to deeper self-awareness. So, how do you
Absolutely.
think exploring kink can help people discover new aspects of their identity and, in some cases, maybe heal past traumas?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a good example, actually. I was always a weird kid. I always just did what I wanted. I traveled the world. I really couldn't understand why everyone wasn't doing what I wanted to, because everyone said they wanted to travel. Everybody said they wanted to do these things, but they never did it. And I just did it without even thinking about it. And then later, when I started understanding kink, I started understanding some people are more naturally sort of dominant, more naturally sort of alpha, and they're more naturally just going to do what they want to do, and that's a thing. And other people are more submissive and they're more happy taking care of other people and doing what they're told to do. And I'm not judging one or the other. I'm just saying that starting to understand why we behave the way we have in our personality traits, using BDSM as a lens, is a great way to have a deeper understanding of yourself. You start understanding, oh, okay, now I get it. Oh, okay, I remember the first book I ever read. It said, if you're the kind of person that kind of does what they want to do and goes where they want, you're a dominant. Congratulations, X, Y, Z. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't really even know that was a thing so much. And now I understand it. So deeper understanding. And then when you explore kinks, it's sometimes you find yourself relating to something that you might not understand. Kinks are interesting because a lot of kinks are relocated to different countries. For example, in the UK, in the old days, a lot of people were hit by little sticks when they were bad. Corporal punishment was a thing. So you're a teenager in England, 30 years ago. You probably had that, and some people have that as a fetish later in life. Maybe they liked it, maybe they didn't like it, but they have something to process that was a bit traumatic from that time. Where in a country like Canada, where really that never really happened, it's not a thing. In the Middle East, there's a lot of kinks around feet and hair, because I think that's probably what young boys are seeing a lot of at a certain age. So we're already learning about ourselves. We're already processing stuff that's in us from the time we were young, just because we find ourselves interested in something, one thing more than another, And sometimes it's a counterpoint. It's a bit cliche, but it's also true that a lot of very powerful men, by day get what's called decision fatigue, and they love just to be told what to do, because, they all day long, they're making all these decisions affecting people. So in their private life, they love just to be told what to do. Or conversely, someone in their private or public life might be like someone whose job is to do what everyone else tells them to do, and then in their private life, they like to tell everybody else what to do. Sometimes it offers a spiritual balance or an energetic balance for us as well. But ultimately, when you talk openly and you explore human nature and what brings us together and what pushes us apart, you understand yourself. You understand yourself better, and you understand the other person better, and you create more intimacy, because the truth is nobody completely understands themselves. Maybe I don't think anybody completely understands herself. All we can really hope to is learn more and more, and it's fun to do that. And we change too from time. So you may started off liking one thing, and as you grow, you change. I myself was more dominant in the beginning, and now I found myself in BDSM terms what's called switchy, which means I can try both sides a little bit. I never thought I would ever get there, but here I am. So it also moves along with time, and you learn about yourself, and hopefully you build better relationships from it.
Lovely, lovely. And as a first-time director, Todd, what challenges did you face in presenting the subject of kink in a way that educates and informs while still respecting the privacy and experiences of the individuals involved?
Well, this community is very Not see, well, it is actually quite secretive in India, but in different parts of the world, it's more secretive than other parts of the world. But regardless, people still don't want to be judged. So most people are very, very private about their kinks, and very, very few people initially would be just willing to talk openly because they're school teachers and they're firemen and they're people in the real estate agents, whatever.
Mhm.
And they get. I mean, it's a bit like being gay would have been 50 years ago. It was like people thought you were from another planet or something. Now it's something that's a little bit more, well, a lot more accepted in North America. I know India is kind of in the middle on that one, but um, it just takes time for you to develop, and you understand. They were never doing anything wrong, but they understood that there was a public perception, so they were cautious and careful. So getting vouched for, meeting one person that introduces you to two, which incidentally is yet another reason why, if you do enter this world, you need to be very careful, very kind, very respectful, because everybody's going to be your reference. And if you do something silly, you won't get invited to anything else and nobody will talk to you again. You need to be honest, but not try and put anything on people, like expect anything from anybody. You explore, you learn, and you go slow. Otherwise, nobody's going to trust you and you won't get invited to anything because it's all about trust. It's all about being vouched for. So I was lucky enough that somebody vouched for me. And then I met two people that vouched for me, and I met 4 and 8 and so forth. And I ended up interviewing around 300 people. But it was, and now the film is out. More people are willing to talk to me because they saw that I wasn't trying to, I think I was honest and open and showed sort of warts and all and everybody, but I didn't make them all look crazy, which is typically what's been done in the past. Is there's something damaged. These people are messed up somehow, and that's why they're doing this, has sort of been the message of the past, where I just try to be more honest and say these people just like what they're doing, and for some people it really helps, and some people doesn't really work out for them. But these are the people that I met, and this is what happened.
Wow.
So don't be a dick. Don't be a dick.
Absolutely. And finally, Todd, Touch Kink challenges outdated societal norms about sexuality. It's evident. And in your opinion, what needs to happen for society to move towards a more open, non judgmental acceptance of diverse sexual practices? And how does your film contribute to that conversation?
Well, one thing a little caveat on that though, because some people are surprised. Over half the people that are into kink and BDSM, it's nothing to do with sex per se. They may genuinely just like to be tied up, or they may genuinely just like to be spanked, for example. Mm-hmm. So that's one of misconceptions I wanted to sort of clear up, because everyone thinks it's all about sex. And for about the half people, it's nothing to do with sex at all. It's a completely separate thing. I mean, it depends how you want to define sex. Mm-hmm. Anyway, having put that caveat up front, I would say that the important lesson and the important way forward is just building, and I think it's happening organically, because you're building safe little communities where people can feel like they can talk about who they are, what they like, and without judgment, and whether that be a real life community or an online community. But it starts with a spark. Society, you're not going to ever change society overnight, but little sparks of conversation, more discussion, more information, more documentaries, more articles, more podcasts, more things to slowly let people understand that this isn't anything to be afraid of. This is something that is actually in many ways safer and better than what's sort of currently going on. Mm-hmm. But it's little points of light. It's lots of information and people who are open and honest about what's going on if they're in a position to do so. And that's what moves society forward. I mean, there's a lot of analogies with the gay community. 50, 60 years ago, there was people who was brave people that came out and said that they were gay. There was obviously a lot more people that were, but I mean, it takes a few people, and now I think it's slowly starting to happen. There's a few people that are, more openly into it. Rihanna has talked about it. Dave Navarro has talked about it. I think a lot of the major sort of Hollywood, stars and stuff are at least talking about various kinks and interests. And so it's slowly entering the conversation. It's much bigger than people realize. But as it slowly enters the conversation, and people can say, "Oh, I like the same thing that Rihanna likes." Okay, great. If you have, if that's your cultural point,
Mhm.
50 Shades of Grey, as bad as a movie it was a great conversation starter. I didn't like the movie. Most people hate the movie, but whenever I would ask someone if
Mhm.
I wouldn't ask them actually on about kink on the nose. Sometimes I would ask them what they thought of 50 Shades of Grey. And
Mhm.
if they said, "Oh, I hated it, it was weird," then that's the end of the conversation. If they say, "Oh, it was great, I loved every minute of it," I'd be like, "Okay, great, but good, let's have a conversation." But my favorite answer was, I liked it, but I heard that there was a lot of things that were wrong about it. Those were my favorite people. But it was a good conversation starter to have that cultural touchstone as to talk about this film. There's many great films now out about this subject, but to talk about it, and you don't know what it's like to live in India until you lived in India. You don't know what it's like to live in Germany till you lived in Germany, and they have, both places have pluses and minuses. I like the food better in India by a mile. And the weather and the people. No, I like the people. I like German people too, actually.
Oh.
Just two. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses everywhere, So just have open up those conversations. Have the society's only going to move if more people are willing to talk about it, and people just have to open their minds. It's like everything, you've got to open your mind to what it's like to be someone from this place, and what it's like to be that, and be curious. Don't think it's weird when you hear somebody is, there's, I don't know. It could be more mundane things. I mean, I know there's whole states in India that are vegetarian. Some people think that that's weird. I think that's wonderful. Why do they do that? Maybe there's something to learn there, but don't just close your mind thinking, "Oh no, would miss my hamburgers too much." Try to learn why people do things, and there's always something to be learned from being open minded. When you hear something a little unusual for you,
Exactly.
don't just dismiss it. Try to understand why it's done that way. You'll be rewarded with amazing knowledge.
Exactly. Wow, Todd, that was really, really a beautiful conclusion to this conversation. And finally, if our listeners want to learn more about Touch Kink, where can they watch the film and how can they connect with you to stay updated on your work or maybe engage in conversations about the themes you explore?
Best thing to do is go to touchkink.com and sign up for my newsletter. You go to there, you give me your email, and I send out a newsletter once a month. It's usually geolocated, so if you're from India, I believe it can, I'll try to send it out for stuff that's there. But yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is just sign up. And that's sort of my goal on these podcasts, is to get people to sign up for my newsletter, because I'm also doing a 10-part series shortly called Modern Love.
Wow.
And I'm going to be exploring, various cultures and various other kink and non-kink aspects of connection and relationships. And with any luck, I'll get to do an episode in India. We'll see how it goes.
Super. Lovely. We'll add all the details in the show notes for our listeners. And Todd, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and experiences into the world of kink and BDSM. And I'm very sure your film Touch Kink, it's opening up important, crucial conversations around consent, intimacy, and the freedom to explore our desires without any judgment. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, for those who want to dive deeper into the world of King, be sure to visit touchking.com and check out the documentary and subscribe for newsletter from Todd, and look out for his upcoming work as well. We'll include the links in the show notes for you as well. And thank you to everyone for tuning into the Mindful Living podcast. And remember, curiosity and open-mindedness are powerful tools for growth and self discovery. So, until next time, stay curious and stay mindful.